Welcome, boys and girls, to Random Conflux, where today we're talking about peace and love through violence and mayhem.
Bows and arrows, stones, bullets.
Now, specifically, we're talking about different weapons in video games, like bows versus guns and things like that. And we're talking fictional weapons, tools meant for defeating your opponent in a virtual environment.
I'm pretty sure most people with a brain would figure that out.
Yes, but the YouTube robots won't. So we have to put that disclaimer for the YouTube robots.
They're robots. Of course they're not going to figure that out. They're only as smart as the people that program them. And that's saying something. Anyways, sorry for the rant. Welcome to Random Conflux, the most must-see video game show, wrestling topic,
whatever the heck this thing is.
Yes. And like John said, we're talking about weapons in video games.
Peace and love.
And harmony.
And hugging.
That's just going too far. Personal boundaries, sir.
Cannibalism?
That's perfect. Cannibalism is A-okay. Hugs, personal space.
If you're taking this seriously, I'm sorry. We are joking.
Why would anybody take that seriously? Just...
You get the one person.
Yeah. But if they took anything we said here seriously, unless it's within a serious tone, then we will have had a cease and desist from day one.
Yeah.
And even though a few things have tried to shut down the channel or get some of our videos taken off, we're still here. And I'm talking about you, Shotcut. People behind Shotcut.
I know you're one-sided war with them.
No, it's not one-sided. They tried to take down the video. Said that it was badgering. It's only like my view, along with maybe like a handful of other people that actually agree with me. And when I say a handful, I'm usually talking about like a good giant size handful.
Yeah, but
you know, like in those commercials with the goldfish, the basketball player, the big hand, taking the whole bag. Like I got more than 64 here. Yeah, that kind of handful. But I digress. This is neither the time nor the place to be so random as off topic as talking about Shotcut. When we're talking about weapons in video games. Another video that may be getting taken down.
Nah, jokes aside. Well, we'll call them tools from now on. That way we can't. But that said, I know Matt. The original idea was from Matt. He was talking like bows versus guns in different games.
Well, okay, let's go with that.
Let's start with that. Yeah.
Let's start with that. One of the things I've noticed, Skyrim for compared to Fallout or any sort of Elder Scrolls versus any Fallout game. Elder Scrolls, your best way of long-range attack is either spells or bow. And with that, they have a special engine that allows for a more realistic feel towards pulling that bow back.
Yeah.
And most of the game, you're only using long range to an extent, but most of your weaponry that's going to do the most damage is a lot of your melee weapons.
Yeah. Whereas Fallout, well, it's the opposite. You can use short range, but you're primarily using long range.
Yeah. You have a lot. Well, guns are faster than bows, but take a Skyrim bow and put it in Fallout.
What you can, there's mods for it.
Yes, there is mods that put a bow in Fallout,
yeah.
But it works like a gun. You pull the trigger back and you release the bow. instead of just holding the trigger as pulling the bow string and then release the trigger to release the bow.
Yeah. Now, here's a question. When you play Skyrim, do you prefer to go like more strictly bows, or do you like to go in melee?
I like bows. I like long range combat.
Yep. I know you like bows in real life too. Like you like practicing archery and things like that.
Yes, I also like throwing knives. That works wonders. But it also has to do with like my own like martial arts background too, to that extent. Like there's nothing better than like finding your own piece of wood to make your own bow, and then finding out which type of vine has the most electricity to it to actually make a natural bow out in middle of nowhere. And if that's something you know how to do and you're ever trapped in the woods and someone's coming after you,
you can survive.
You can survive. Or you learn how to make a javelin out of a tree branch or like a stick. You know, you just kind of like most martial arts forms out there don't really teach you that. That's just something that my teacher taught me.
Yeah. That said, back to video games though. Which video games have you played that you think actually do the different weapon where you right?
Farcry.
Farcry?
Yeah, because they have a different engine for the bow and a different engine for the guns.
Yeah.
But like Fallout wasn't ever supposed to have like a bow into their arsenal.
Yeah.
They were supposed to have in Fallout 4 throwing weapons that were supposed to act like grenades. You just hold the grenade button down and chuck a weapon. And usually it was supposed to be like modified versions of the switchblade, the tire iron hatchet that you can make, and the harpoons that you load into the admiral's friend, or any harpoon gun. The ammo was supposed to be put into the weapons category instead of the ammo category, because you were supposed to be able to throw the harpoons.
And instead they had it as like a railgun sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a
harpoon gun. Yeah.
Because they couldn't get like the stuff to work right.
Yeah. And honestly, when it comes to like games like that, I'd rather play an exploration game like Fallout, Far Cry, with Skyrim, than play like something that's solely dedicated to shooting. Because if I like, not that Call of Duty or any of those games are bad, it's just I lose interest in them within the first 5 minutes of playing.
Well,
I don't know if you're that way or not.
Yeah, kinda.
It's like there's nothing to do other than just pick off your opponents.
Yeah, and that's also like level to level instead of like an open world RPG.
And yeah, I still like GoldenEye, but
yeah, but GoldenEye doesn't really have like the throwing weapons. At least
you get knives.
Yeah, they have the throwing knives.
Yeah,
but it's around the same mechanic. They treat it like a gun.
Yeah.
It's one press to do both, not a press and release.
Yeah. Speaking of what, Jeff, for those of you watching that play GoldenEye, License to Kill slappers only, loads of fun.
Slap to death. Oh my god.
Just try it once, you'll love it. Just
memories. Memories. I remember doing that like on the original N64 version. Oh, brother.
Yeah.
What were we talking about again?
Different weapons.
Well, games that are more statted to making melee weapons stronger.
Yeah.
is always going to be based for the melee weapons.
Yeah.
But games that particularly like Fallout, that's more geared towards long range weapons like guns per se, are always going to have more of a shooter
Yeah.
feel rather than like a beat 'em up feel.
Now, two games that have a really good balance between the two, even though I would say they're geared more towards weapons and melee. Cyberpunk has a nice blend between the two. If you choose to go the melee route, same with Metal Gear, the Metal Gear Solid games.
Yes, but Metal Gear Solid, you're wanting to avoid to use the weapons.
Yeah,
You're wanting to like sneak up behind the people.
yeah,
The whole point of Metal Gear Solid is to conserve ammo.
yeah. And but the weapons feel just as good as them, like getting close and like being stealthy.
And they really make it clear in Metal Gear Solid 4 when you use a weapon a lot, you can hear Solidus going, "You enjoy the war."
Yeah, or you enjoy all the killing or something, and it makes them throw up.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
But, anyways, it's one of those things where, like, Far Cry has it down to a science.
well, they have a nice blend too.
Far Cry has it where you have throwing knives that work as intended. You have a bow that works as intended. Each weapon feels like it's made to be its own thing.
The only reason I stopped playing Far Cry is because last time I played it, it ticked me off. They're good games, don't get me wrong, but
Well, which
I got
Far Cry did you last play?
I was playing 4 and I kept getting killed by honey badgers, so I kind of got ticked off at it.
Yeah, that's a thing. Those honey badgers should be called honey bastards. They are a pain in the butt crack. They are the donkey of video games. Those devil skunks do not give two fucks.
That said, what would you say is your favorite weapon to use in video games, like out of any game you've played?
I think it would have to do with the game itself. If the game has to do with being stealthy and hitting your targets before they have a chance to see you, I want something that's precision.
Yeah.
Like, you can make a bow precision, but it's not really lifelike.
Yeah.
And snipers, the further the thing is, the harder it is to hit.
Yeah.
Because every breath you take is going to move the gun.
And that's something Metal Gear Solid does well, is they make that semi-realistic feeling whenever you...
And then when you're wanting to hit like a further away target, you have to hold your breath so the cursor is centered.
Yeah.
Which, again, that's a real life thing that you have to do in order to use a rifle. Most people, and you don't notice it unless you're actually looking through a scope, but most people have a natural tremor, and it's due to weight balance. And most snipers back in World War II or somewhere around that era would actually smoke cigarettes in order to quell those types of shakes. As to handguns, which most games don't really take into consideration the drop value. Handguns are actually more cheaty to use long range than a sniper rifle, but you don't have a large target as if you would use a scope. But the moment you go to use a rifle scope on a pistol, it makes that pistol more rifle-like rather than just using like a simple magnifier like a reflex scope and then using your own ability to size the target. And then once you can see the tiniest little portion of that target without any scope and just using the iron sights, 9 times out of 10, the pistol's going to be more effective than the rifle itself. But in real life, unless it's a very high-powered pistol, you're probably looking at a drop-off medium range.
Yeah.
Like, if you aim at the head, you're probably going to hit the opposite head.
Oh, in video games, I admit I'm better at pistols than I am automatics and rifles.
But in real life, if you were aiming at a head within like 500 miles from your target, you're probably going to hit the groin area rather than the head.
Yeah, and video games aren't accurate when it comes to...
No. And that's just because of how much gunpowder and force that hits the bullet and the force of the trajectory out of the chamber also takes in comparison to gravity itself, but gravity doesn't take into consideration until about I would say a few microseconds after the bullet has left the chamber, which in that turn would actually end up being within maybe 50 to 100 feet by then.
Yeah. Which one game that does it well, as far as like accuracy with weapons, is like you said, Far Cry's 1. Metal Gear Solid 5 actually did a pretty good job at it.
Yeah.
Which we'll probably be using some footage from those games if I think about recording, when I'm recording B-roll.
I think in a way, MGS 5 kind of does too much of a drop.
You think?
Yeah. Because a sniper rifle that's supposed to hit like long range, I've noticed there's a shorter drop gap. And it's okay, you know where that quarry is?
Yeah.
Where you have to look for the special anti-aircraft weapon?
I think, yeah.
Okay. That area is like one of the major areas for like the POW capture or like rescue missions. And I noticed if you go through where you have the height advantage, it's the only place to enter that area with a height advantage.
Yeah.
There's usually a person directly opposite of you. They're kind of in between the two wall setup.
Yeah.
If you hit just right in between the two walls, you can usually get them.
Yeah.
You can get a perfect headshot by actually aiming further above their head, where their head's like lower to the bottom of the crosshair, because the drop off is halfway from point A to point B.
Yep. And the Metal Gear Solid series is always valued like realism as far as their weaponry goes. In the original Metal Gear Solid, they actually hired like, if I remember the thing that I was watching, they hired like the Japanese Defense Force as mocap for like holding the weapons and things like that. And the reason they picked the gun they did in the first game was they were going to pick another gun, but it was easier to get the gun they picked was easier to show in their because of the low polygon in the PS1.
Yeah.
And they could make it more accurate looking with that one than with the one they were going to pick originally. Kind of an interesting fact.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like a lot of the shooter games from the PS1 era really didn't do very well with how the guns looked.
Yeah. And then in 5, they used their own names for guns, but they were still like, they still tried for accuracy on like how they worked and stuff.
Well, they've always had their own names for a lot of the guns. Except for the SOCOM. I think that one is an actual model.
They had actual models up until 5 because they had like the Single Action Army, that was the actual name.
That was the revolver, wasn't it?
Yeah, the AK was the actual name. They had some of their own names too, but
they always shortened the name.
Yeah,
but that's getting into just
that's a whole other thing.
Guns.
Yeah.
Other games that do.
There's a lot of survival games that do both.
Yeah, but that's a survival game.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to use a bow more often in survival than you will a weapon.
Mhm.
You'll either use melee or you'll use a bow.
Yeah.
Because in survival, like, weapon or bullets don't come cheap.
Mhm.
And you're having to scavenge, where with a bow, you're more or less going to reuse the ammo.
Yeah.
And that's if you remember where all the targets you hit were.
Yeah. Reminds me of using a bow in Conan Exiles.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome game, but
I love using the bow for mainly that fact is you can keep reusing the arrows so many times.
Mhm.
And any game that puts in a bow where you don't get to like reuse the arrows, it's not realistic.
I think in Exiles you could reuse the arrows because they were on the person, but it was a toss up because there was a chance of them breaking or something, wasn't it?
Well, wood arrows are going to break
Yeah.
eventually anyways.
Yeah.
But when you're getting into like the carbon shaft arrows or like more sturdier arrow shafts,
Yeah.
they're not gonna break as easy.
Yeah.
They started making carbon fiber arrows to make more longevity out of like people actually using arrows because people like to bow hunt.
Mhm.
Or they prefer to not have to always buy arrows every time they go out hunting for bow or hunting with a bow, rather than like having to go out and rebuy ammo or stuff like that. And bow hunting is actually cheaper in real life than actually gun hunting.
Mm-hmm.
Because one, you're having to buy a license for the gun. You're having to buy the bullet. You gotta keep the gun clean. You gotta take a safety. With a bow, it's you gotta think safety first and foremost. You're not gonna pull the bow back and just shoot it willy nilly. You're gonna make sure that there's a proper target and you have proper line of sight to it. And one, it's also a more quiet weapon. You can also get back from using a bow if you use like you can kind of have a gun and bow through doing like a crossbow that gives you the more gun feel to the bow. So especially if you're more used to actually using a gun, you would probably go with a crossbow. Mm-hmm. But if you're more used to an actual bow, having to release the string every time you shoot, rather than pulling a trigger when you shoot, then that could be a difference.
Yeah.
Another thing that a crossbow would be better at is pull string. Because if you hold a bow in a pulled back position for too long, it can actually wear on the elasticity of the string. Mm-hmm. Where crossbows are, plus your arm will get tired eventually. So with a bow, you're pretty much waiting until your target is within range. Then you hurry up, pull back the bow, and then release it without really holding it for too long.
Yes.
With a crossbow, you're pulling back the string before the target even gets there. And then you're putting the bow onto it, or the arrow onto the crossbow. And then you're sighting the creature or the target. Mm-hmm. I'm probably going to get a lot of flack from people that know the differences between crossbows and bows a lot better than I do.
And we don't claim to be experts.
But that's just my history. But reminding people, I was between 5 and 6 when I learned this stuff. So.
Yeah. And that said, we don't claim to be experts. We just.
No.
It's just a discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. And please comment below about any of your experiences or like anything with that.
But in games, it's what are they gearing towards more in the games?
Yeah.
Like, what are they wanting you to use the most in games?
Yeah.
Because most games that do, like most shooter games, will spend more time perfecting the shooting mechanic than the melee mechanic.
Yeah.
And then the melee games will spend more time focusing on the melee rather than the shooting mechanics.
Yeah.
And like I've said before, one of the games that does the best of both worlds is Far Cry. And at this point, I haven't seen one game that really has topped being able to do both and do the bow right.
The Ratchet and Clank games.
They use bow.
They don't use bow, but you're talking like what does melee better or what does weapons better.
No, I'm talking about like games that have long range and short range, but also use like guns, bows, and has a long range of different weaponry.
What about the Turok games? Do those use guns or are those bows only? The ones for like N64.
Turok?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I've played that game.
I haven't played them forever, so I don't remember.
That's the question.
Yeah.
But I know Far Cry, and Far Cry is one game that does it. Assassin's Creed.
Oh, yeah.
Actually does both very well. You also have the ability to use the pistol in the game, but like the bow is a little bit better. In my opinion, it's better, especially for stealth and just being able to recycle the ammo.
Yeah.
Where with the pistols, it's louder and more attractive.
Attractive? As in you're attracted to it?
No.
Do you find it pretty?
No, not that type of attraction.
I know, I'm being silly.
It brings more attention to you. So, like, there's Far Cry that has a large array of weaponry that they do very well. And then Assassin's Creed follows within that same environment.
Yeah.
But wasn't Assassin's Creed and Far Cry made by the same people?
They're both Ubisoft.
That's what I thought.
That said, I know like you were talking about it, but if you're talking the physical attraction of weapons, I think that bows are more physically attractive than guns because I like wood more than metal. Like, I like the older style guns with like the wooden stocks and stuff.
Or the wooden grips on the pistols.
Yeah, just because I like that wood grain. And like you get a nice like wooden bow.
So
there's just something about
more about like long bows and other types of wooden bows
for aesthetics,
rather than like carbine bows.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with carbon fiber bows and stuff. They're awesome bows. I'm just saying like for physical appeal.
Oh yeah.
If you want one for decoration, I want like an engraved like long bow sitting on my like on a shelf somewhere.
Oh yeah, that would be perfect. Just have a long bow just sitting on the mantle.
Yeah, that or same thing with a rifle. I would want like with like wooden engravings and crap like that.
Well, if I buy a rifle for like a set piece, I'm gonna gut it.
Yeah.
There's not gonna be a firing pin in it. There's not gonna be really much of the gun to actually fire.
It's because you're using it as a decoration, not a...
Yeah, and any decoration piece should be a non-functional weapon.
And that's because you don't want kids getting it or stuff like that.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, one, we are talking about weapons, and we're talking about weapons with video games, but we also need to talk about logic as well.
Oh, you need, if any sort of weapon, you need to be safe with.
most people nowadays look too much towards guns than they really need to. They think, well, if I don't have a gun, I can't protect my family. If I don't have a gun out in the open and ready for me to use, I can't protect my family. If I don't have a gun on my person, I can't protect my family. If you're so bound to needing to rely on a gun, then understand this: you cannot protect your family if you can't learn how to use other things other than guns. So let's just put it into that perspective. Because one thing, guns are more of a threat to your family than any other intruder. Because what if your child gets that weapon? If you can't defend your family without a gun, then you don't need to be the one defending them.
That said, if you do have one, you should keep it locked up so the kids can't get it. And all that
Exactly.
stuff. Yeah.
Proper use of any sort of firearm or any sort of weapon, in particular, bow, handgun, rifle, whatever. I don't care what it is.
You should
if you don't treat it properly, then you don't need it.
And that's any weapon. It doesn't. That's even like kitchen knives. You need to treat anything that could be potentially harmful with respect.
Yeah. Anything that could hurt someone.
Yeah.
Can possibly do harm to yourself.
Like even a lighter, you need to treat with respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you have to look at things from an outside perspective a lot.
Yeah.
And too many people are, and I'm saying this as an American, me and my brother both, we are American, but I don't always agree that, like, the Second Amendment means that the best way to say it is I don't agree that it dictates that you're demanded a weapon. I don't think it's a right. I think it's...
You think it's a privilege.
A privilege.
And if you disagree...
But, and here's the reason why I say that. It's because there's too many people that don't have a full set of marbles inside their head that think that they deserve a firearm when in reality they don't. There's too many people out there that don't have a load of sense on how to take care of a firearm and wonder why their child got shot with it.
Yeah.
Or they wonder why they're in trouble for using it. It's like, think of other ways to handle the situation before it comes down to pulling out that firearm. Because if that's your main reaction, then, like I said before, like...
No, a firearm...
You're not meant to, like, protect your family.
A firearm should be the last resort.
The whole Second Amendment was always to bear arms, but it means bear arms by militia.
Yeah.
It's to protect you against government. It's to protect you against any sort of invader.
Yeah. And... like I was saying. But that being said, like I said, with any sort of weapon, you need to respect it. You need to be respectable. And a weapon should only be used as a last resort. It doesn't matter what the weapon is.
Yeah, because you need to understand once you pull that trigger or you let go of that rope on a bow, you're taking someone's life. And that needs to be something that you don't take lightly. No.
There should be a last resort, self-defense.
And most people don't really understand that in a sense that once you do take that life, it's going to stay with you for the rest of your life.
Or even with hunting, because I may get some flack for this, but I actually do approve of like deer hunting and things like that. Because I grew up with it. It's something, but you need to respect the fact that you are taking the life of that animal.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
You
need to eat that.
Shoot an animal and not feel a damn thing about it?
No.
Or are you going to just leave that animal lay there?
No,
and not use that animal?
No, you use every part of the animal that you can.
Then there you go.
Yeah.
You have sentimental attachment. You don't, and this is something that's taught to anybody that goes hunting. And it's also part of the law, too. If you leave any sort of game behind It's fuck, I forget the name of it. Do you remember the name?
On offhand.
Poaching.
Mm-hmm.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Or if you do it without a license or without tags.
Well, if you're doing it for food and you're still taking the game with you, technically it's okay. But if you go out and hunt and you're just more or less doing it for sport and you're not doing anything with the kills, that's called poaching and that's illegal. But that's also a topic for a different thing.
Yeah, back to the video game topic, some later news.
I take weapon safety very seriously.
Yeah.
And there's too many people out there that don't take it serious enough.
And if you have a differing opinion, please feel free to comment. We love to hear from you guys. We can have civil discussion about this. Like I said, me and Zach have slightly different views on stuff, but similar at the same time.
Okay, your view about what I just said.
For the most part, I agree with you.
Like, do you think that your first instinct to protect your family would be grab a gun?
Oh, no.
Or because the moment you grab that gun and you aim it, you're expecting to take a life. And that should never be your first priority.
No, it should be, it should literally be your last resort. I agree with you on that.
It should always be trying to de-escalate.
Yeah.
Rather than escalate. But in video games, that's perfectly fine. But don't mix fantasy with reality.
But what if my fantasy is your reality, or vice versa? Because everybody's fantasy is another reality. I'm messing around. Back to seriousness now.
But
that's actually one of the reasons why I like the Metal Gear Solid games. You can go through the entire game
without even firing a shot.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of it. And pretty much every game for, I think, the PS2... No, they didn't start into PS3. But even the older games that came out on the PS3 for...
now, Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, you can get away without firing a shot. The first game, you can, but it was almost impossible. It was really hard.
Well, 2 and 3 actually have an achievement for not firing the gun.
Because you have the trait gun, and you can also do it like full stealth.
But games are meant to be fun. Games were meant to kind of take you out of the real world and make you understand that, one, it's a game. It's not real life. But you need to really think and make sure you understand that if you're playing a shooting game, it's a game.
It's not reality.
It's not reality. You do that kind of stuff in the real world, and there's some consequences for that. Other games that do weaponry really well that I don't think's too much into the world of weaponry. Like, it's not its main focus. It's like games like Jak and Daxter, because one, it's more about like the vehicles and the melee and platforming. Star Wars, where you're playing as like a Jedi, that's more about like using the Force or using like the lightsaber. It's not really geared towards using a weapon, but the Jedi game Force Awakens?
Star Wars Force Awakens. Yeah. What about it?
The PS1 game that basically Luke reforms the Jedi and you're one of the new Jedi.
Oh, Jedi Academy or something like that.
Yeah, that. That actually uses blasters very well. And I don't think you get a lightsaber early on in that game.
Actually, another one that has a good mix, even though it's not primarily that, the Lego Star Wars games.
Yeah.
Yes, they're like child games, but they do balance stuff surprisingly well.
And it takes, well,
I think all the Lego games do a good job at balancing stuff.
Well, the crossbows work like guns.
Yeah, but it's also Lego.
It's also Lego, yes. You're not having to reload or anything along those lines. but they're fun.
Mhm.
But games are gearing more towards realism and like how they view weaponry
Mhm.
and how they balance weapons
Mhm.
in their games. I still say like Far Cry is probably the best
Mhm.
in that situation
Makes sense.
because one, it's not an RPG, so the amount of damage per shot
It's the same regardless.
isn't going to
Yeah.
be anything. It's more like the damage that it's going to do where it's going to hit.
Yeah.
And how, like, is it going to penetrate steel?
Yeah.
Is it going to penetrate the armor?
Mhm.
Is it going to work on vehicles?
Yeah.
And Far Cry, it takes that to a realism.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to take out a vehicle, you're going to probably either use a rocket launcher, grenade launcher, or you're going to use a explosive arrow.
Mm-hmm.
For most of your armored people, you're either going to use some sort of flaming arrow, explosive arrow to really penetrate the armor. Because that kind of stuff it will either eat through the armor,
Mm-hmm.
like it ignores the armor, in a realistic deal. But if the place that you're going to hit isn't armored, then like you're probably either going to use a silenced pistol for close range, or you're going to use a bow just to be silent. And that's probably something that they take a lot from, like Metal Gear games or Splinter Cell games. And if you're going to compare like technical espionage games, Metal Gear versus Splinter Cell. Splinter Cell, they want you to use the weapon.
Yeah.
Where Metal Gear, they want you to
Be more stealthy.
strategize how you're going to approach the situation. Another one that comes to mind that does weapon balance very well is Perfect Dark or Pitch Dark, something like that.
Perfect Dark, you're right. For the N64?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
What's
Gemini.
Yeah. Actually, something funny is Perfect Dark used the same engine as GoldenEye. It was technically a pseudo sequel. They even had the temple level from GoldenEye in Perfect Dark.
Weird, because Perfect Dark has nothing to do with James Bond.
I said pseudo sequel, as in they use the same engine and stuff like that.
Yeah. But with that being said, like, the game world should always be fictional.
Yeah.
It should never come into your real life scenario.
Yeah.
Best thing to do in real life situations, always try to de-escalate a situation rather than escalate the situation.
Yeah.
Try to talk things down before things go too violent.
Yeah.
And then when you realize that that's not going to happen, then
self-defense
Yeah.
kicks in. Yeah. I can't think of anything else to talk about aside from like that.
well, I guess then that's all we really need to talk about.
Yeah.
You have any other games before we close off that you think does well in like weaponry and how the weapons go?
Not a fan. I'm sure there are. If you guys have any games, feel free to comment below and tell us. Because, like I said, there's things we missed. If you want to talk more about...
Oh, GoldenEye.
I did mention GoldenEye before, didn't I? I talked about
Well,
it.
yes, but no at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't talk about how weapons scaled in GoldenEye.
Oh, yeah, they're pretty effective. Like, different ones to have different fills and stuff like that.
Like the PK2.
Yeah.
Unless you're getting headshots, it's actually one of the weakest guns.
Yeah.
But you get the DD-44,
Yeah.
and that gun actually packed a punch, and you can hear in the sound and how the controller also works with it.
And then there's a claw, which is the worst weapon in the game.
Oh my god.
I
want a claw of the claw.
That being said, I think that's a good place to end this. Please feel free to comment and tell us your opinion on whether video games are like real life situations. With that said, I think I'm John.
I think I'm Zach. And this has been Random Conflux. Like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff. And remember,
Always wash your hands.
well, that should always be necessary. But remember, this is a video
About a thing.
about a thing, about a game, about a place that's probably the same, but in a video nonetheless. Has it been random enough? Has it been random for the randomness of randomness?
I don't know who we are anymore. What are we doing with our lives?